Hello, friends. Happy Saturday to you. Happy spring to you. I hope you're doing well where you are. We are blooming here in Buffalo, and everybody's much happier than we are at the end of winter when it really starts to just grate on you. It just does. The sun deprivation, the extended cold. It's a pain in the it's a pain in the tuckus by the end. At the beginning, it's so beautiful, though. And the seasons are beautiful, and the seasons changing, and the way the sun looks in different seasons. And, I would miss it if I moved somewhere that was just warm all the time. But it does, towards its end, it does wear you down. You do go insane at the end of most winters. At least I do. For a short time, my brain shorts out, and then it comes back, and then you go, oh wow, new world. It's like a new world when it blooms. Um, I wanted to mention that there's this little brown thing that you see here is the edge of my phone case. In case you're wondering, I left my iPad in the car because I had a gig last night, and I used the iPad for some of the cover songs I do. It has the chords and lyrics. And so yeah, I just left it there because I'm playing again tonight, and I left my guitars in the car. Everything's in the garage, so it's good. So I'm on the phone. That's why the video quality probably looks a little different too. So yeah, I got some new dreams to share if you're interested. Um, I'm sorry about the last video being so quiet when I didn't use the microphone. I didn't know it would be that quiet, and I was talking about the dream I had about being on the alien ship, which I'm still thinking about because it was so detailed and that ship was so big, and it was interesting. And I remembered that I had written down one of the funny things that I heard someone say in that dream before I woke up, when they were talking about like technology and their technological sort of research on the ship. This is something they said just before I woke up from one part of the dream. And one of these scientists on the spaceship said, the big news is that the sun is completely unnameable. So, one more time. The big news is that the sun is completely unnameable. I have no idea what that means. But it's so funny that I heard it so clearly that I wake up and it's in my head like somebody just said it. I don't know what that is about my dreams, that I have these details that are just so odd sometimes that I don't even understand or even seem out of context. So, the big news is that the sun is completely unnameable. I don't know. Is that like a reference to God? Like, like God, they say, doesn't really have a name. God expresses itself as I am, but it's like so all encompassing that giving it a name would be like reducing God by calling God God. That really I am is more open ended. So and the sun is a marvel, and I was thinking about that when I was taking a bike ride. Was it yesterday? No, the day before. And I was looking up at the sun and just thinking, that thing's gonna burn another 5 billion years. Like, like how that's crazy. You look up at it and you don't think about it every day that it is the only thing making life possible, and we're millions of miles away from it. And if we were any closer, it would fry us. But we experience it as just pleasant heat on the skin in summer. So maybe it's true. Maybe the sun is unnameable because it's such a marvel. So maybe I have figured that clue out. But that really isn't the dream I wanted to get into. We'll let that one sit if you'd like to watch that other video. So I took some notes on a couple different dreams that I will run through. Okay. For those who are interested, and if you're not interested, I totally understand because my videos are just weird. I just, I was listening to a little bit of the last one. I was like, this is just weird. If people tune into this, What do they what do they possibly think? Now, of course, I can maybe make a case for myself as a Pisces that we are the 12th house of the zodiac, and supposedly, oh, look how big my hand is. Um, we are supposedly more in touch with the other side because, like, we walk between both worlds. We walk between the physical world, this one, and we walk with the ethereal. And so my dreams often seem to be in that realm of the formless, or where maybe ideas are conjured and things are created from pure imagination. Who knows? Just talking out loud, as usual, just saying weird things out loud. So I sent my mom a text after this dream that I had at the beginning of the week. And this is what I wrote to Mom. Last night I dreamt I was at the Stenzel house. And when I say Stenzel, that was the street we lived on in the suburbs of Buffalo, where I grew up until I was about 21. So last night I dreamt I was at the Stenzel house late at night having tea and hot chocolate with Grandpa Falgiano. So that would be my dad's dad. It was like we were both up late together watching TV. I didn't know how old I was or where you, meaning my mom, and Steve, my brother, were. When I got up from the living room to go to the kitchen, Grandpa came with me. I was digging through the top shelves of the corner cabinet next to the stove to see what we had as far as like tea and hot chocolate while the water was heating up. And Grandpa said he had a tea that he liked, and I was probably gonna and I said I was probably gonna have hot chocolate, but I kept looking for something else that I hoped we had that might have been vanilla in flavor. I poured, let's see, I poured most of the water into his cup, which had a special holder to help him drink from it as an older person. And then I poured mine. And then we went back to the living room, I guess to watch some more late night TV. He was simple and mostly quiet, but he indulged me as I rifled through the cabinet for something more exotic I thought maybe he would be willing to try. And I didn't write down my mom's response to that, but I recall that her response was that maybe my grandfather was just, would have indulged me if I had said, "Oh, Grandpa, you gotta try this vanilla something, I don't know, chai," and out of love for me, he would have tried it. I could see him doing something like that. My grandfather and my dad's dad he's been gone for many years now. He died, about 20 years ago. And I live in the house that my grandparents owned, where my father grew up in Buffalo. And I haven't dreamt of my grandparents often, so it was kind of cool to see him show up. I was glad to see him. He was an interesting man. He was a big, sensitive man. He was 6 foot tall, a big man physically, but he would cry at the drop of a hat at all the family gatherings. He had a sweet spot. He had a soft spot, but he was tough too because he ran his own garage for a while. It was more of a tire shop. And one of the famous stories in our family was one time they used to, I think, when they would change out truck tires. I don't know if it's you take the rims out or whatever. Like when you inflate an 18-wheeler truck tire or a larger truck tire, you do them in a cage of some kind, because if the tire explodes, it could kill you. And I guess just for for speed, for ease, or just getting maybe a little too casual with that process. One time, when my grandfather was, I don't know, he must have been, I'm going to guess he was around 50 years old. He was changing a truck tire without putting it in the cage, and the tire did explode, and was it the rim that blasted him right in the chest? And if he were a smaller man, it probably would have killed him, but it injured him fairly substantially, and it caused some heart issues later for him. And my father said that that was the only time he ever saw his father cry coming home from the shop. I think he saw him walking up the driveway, and so it must have hurt pretty bad because he was tough. He was a tough guy. I remember a story he told once of he was driving an 18-wheeler that jackknifed, I think, over like a little ridge. So he jackknifed an 18-wheeler. I never got more details about that, and in those days, I think the 18-wheelers were more, the manual shift was, you had to be much physically stronger to manually shift one of those vehicles, because of it wasn't automated the way the gear shifts became standardized, in the 70s, 80s, 90s onward. So, yeah. But it was cool to see him in the dream because, as I said, I've not felt his presence or my grandmother on that side in many dreams over the years, and it felt like he was with me. And it was interesting how much his presence was quiet. He was with me. He was letting me know he was with me, and it seemed like I was a younger version of myself, which would make sense to be in the old house that I grew up in. And it also reminded me of one time when I was, I think like maybe around junior high school age, and my parents had already split by the time I was 10, and my brother was 4. He was really young, so he doesn't really remember as much of my dad being there as I do. And then after my father had moved a couple years after, I remember one time calling him late at night instead of waking up my mom when I was having trouble sleeping, and asking him, like, I don't know, just looking for some comfort to help me get to sleep. And he suggested that I warm up some milk on the stove and maybe make hot chocolate, or maybe just drink the warm milk. And I do remember doing that and talking to him at the same time, and stirring the pot by the same cabinet that I mentioned in this dream, like the exact same corner, like a little corner cabinet where we kept all the teas and cookies and treats, chocolate, things like that, in this corner thing right next to the stove. And it's funny how those memories get imprinted. I don't remember any of the specifics of the conversation, but I remember how it felt. And my grandfather being with me in this dream was a similar feeling. And I've not had many experiences like that with my dad over the years. I love my dad, but he has trouble going deep. It's not the kind of affection I don't think comes super easily to him. And maybe it sticks in my memory because it's one of the maybe few times as a boy that I remember feeling like comforted by my father, which I don't mean as a dig against my dad, but it's no. I think that's maybe why my grandfather appeared in the dream in the same kind of place and with the same kind of thing going on, making a hot beverage for us to share together and to be together. So that was that. And then I kind of had a continuing family theme in the next dream I had that I remember well, which I will tell you about now. Pardon me. Okay, so this I just wrote as a note to myself. Because sometimes if I don't write down what I see in the dream, as soon as I wake up, it fades it fades almost immediately. And then sometimes if I write down what happens in the dream in some detail, then as I'm rereading it, I'll remember more to it. It just brings it all back up. So in this other dream, on a different night, cardinal's outside. Hello, cardinal. I can hear it. I've seen the cardinal a lot this spring so far, but not the female, just the male. Don't know what's going on there. Okay, so there was a gathering of extended family in this other dream. It was either a reunion or possibly my birthday or maybe even a graduation. It seemed like there were aunts, uncles, and grandparents, and even young cousins or children who were not yet born and who I didn't know. So it was like being with relatives of mine who are both alive and deceased, and also being with like some younger cousins and extended family who have kids that I don't even know or who haven't even been born yet. It felt like multi-generational, and it felt like the presences of the people were both past, present, and future, even future, unborn. So it was a lot of people, a lot of family cozy together in a large room. And someone asked me if I would sing my favorite song. And I didn't know if I could think of a favorite, but I said I could pick one that I love. And so, again, it was the Tom Waits song, Picture in a Frame, which I mentioned in a previous video and encouraged some of you, well, I encouraged everyone to listen to because I think it's a beautiful song. And I have added it to my repertoire now. And I may do a separate, like, just quickie video of me singing it with guitar. I've been doing it at shows for a week now. And last week, it really went over well. I didn't know if anyone was going to know it, but there was a pocket of people in the corner who were really excited afterward and did know it. And that was neat. And I thought that, I mean, even if you don't know it, if you like a good sentimental love song that's not too sappy, it's a great song. And so I did Picture in a Frame in the dream. And but I didn't have a guitar at first, so I borrowed one from a young cousin. But the guitar was like futuristic or non-existent in our reality because it had maybe 20 or 30 strings on it, and they were all super close together on the neck. So like, usually when you see a guitar and it has 6 strings in there, like there's space between them so that you can put your finger on with a string that you want, and it's easy to orient yourself to play a guitar chord. But this one, the strings were so tightly together that there was no way for me to figure out how to differentiate what strings would correlate to what notes. But I just played it as if it was a normal guitar. I just stuck my hands about where the chords would be, and it worked. And it had, let's see, yeah, the guitar had a unique, powerful resonance. Each chord vibrated sonically past simply strumming it, like the continuity of like an organ, or much lighter and more airy. So, or even like a harp. It felt like while I was playing it that it resonated as as many different instruments at one time. It sounded so full and so bright and zingy, and it just filled the room. And it was like, it was kind of indescribable, but it was much more than a guitar. So some kind of celestial guitar, let's just call it. And I was in awe of the guitar and the sound. So while I was singing and playing, it was really, it was moving to hear how beautiful this instrument was that I was playing along with. And when I finished doing the song, my family members debated what kind of song it was, whether it was a folk song or whether it was a jazz song or a blues song. And someone said that it was too simple chordally, or that they were surprised I liked it because it was so simple. And I said that I thought it was perfect as it is, probably because it's emotionally resonant, regardless of the chord content, and that simple works as well as complex when it works. It just works when it works. This debate was friendly, and the general response to the song was good. I felt, and as I said, I felt like I was among generations past, present, and even perhaps future unborn. So that was kind of neat coming off the dream of my grandfather, because I did sense the presence of some of my deceased aunts and uncles, more on my mom's side of the family. So 2 dreams in a row, kind of like among family, which was neat. And then this last dream that I'd like to share was also in the house that I grew up in the suburbs of Buffalo again. I think we sold the house when I was 21 or 22. Okay, so all right, so I dreamt about being in the house that I grew up in until I was about 21. But in the dream, I had the job that I began working when I was 26, which was booking events at an arts center here in Buffalo, at a university arts center. And I did that job for 20 years, and it was a 1,750 seat hall. So I have mentioned before that I booked a lot of really, really big acts, and a lot of small acts too, in the smaller spaces that we had. And the small acts, the jazz acts, were really some of my favorite shows. But as far as like big acts go, like we had some really big ones, like Bonnie Raitt, Brian Wilson, Mark Knopfler, the Tedeschi Trucks Band, Ray Charles on his last tour, Gregory Hines on his last tour, Joe Cocker on one of his last tours, Joe Jackson, the Indigo Girls, David Byrne a couple of times, Chris Cornell from Soundgarden a couple of times. So that's what I did for 20 years. And in the stream, it was like I had just started. I'd returned to that job. Okay, right. And I used to go to, when I was doing that job, I used to go to this arts conference in New York, like every other year, and then sometimes a music conference in LA. And in the dream, I had just returned from the New York Music Conference, and one of the bands there was an all-Asian Kiss cover band, which is really weird, because, like, it seems random, right? But give me a minute to tell you more. So when I was a very young boy, like kindergarten, first grade, Kiss was my favorite band. And I've said before, kind of like because they were like superheroes. They look like superheroes. And I like the music too, and I still like some of the old records. I have a sentimental attachment to them, even though now I kind of think they're kind like a couple of them are kind of gross. I don't really enjoy hearing interviews with them now, but as a kid, I thought they were super cool, and we would dress up and do Kiss concerts in my backyard a lot, and in the basement we would my friends and I would put on the makeup and our own homemade costumes and pretend to be Kiss. And I may have mentioned this before too. So again, the setup of the dream, I'm returning home from the New York Arts Conference, and an all Asian Kiss cover band was there at the conference, but they basically they followed me home, and I had my old bedroom, which was a small bedroom in our house. And while I was in the bedroom, one of the guys from the band just showed up, and and he said something like, "Oh, it seemed like you liked our group, so here's all of our promo stuff." And what he handed me was a set of DVDs and then posters and maybe even vinyl records. But the graphics on them were horrible. Like, by which I mean super amateurish. They looked like they were put together by someone who didn't know how to do design at all. And it was comical, and I didn't laugh in his face, but it was like I didn't know if he was kind of pranking me. And even the pictures of the guys, and there's 4 band members in Kiss, and they all had makeup, trademark makeup, which was to go along with the characters that they sort of assumed. And the 4 guys in this version of Kiss looked almost nothing like the band members. It looked like they took 4 random people and did a half-assed job of the Kiss makeup. So that was funny too. And that's when I realized that at least 3, but maybe all 4 were of Asian descent, but like not any familiar Asian descents. Like they seemed more of another time, which I'll get to that in a minute. So then, so what it made me think of was that it could be a kind of indirect hello from one of my spirit guides, because I have a spirit guide who supposedly goes by the name Drosh or something similar to that. And he's described in a chapter in my next book, which is very close to completion now. We are far along on the editing, and I have some quotes from manufacturers now. So it's going to happen now, maybe even this summer. And one of the chapters is about how when I went for a psychic reading after I finished the first book, the psychic told me about Droj, and that he was helping me write the second book. And there were periods of time, there were moments in time during the writing of that book where I really very strongly felt like another presence, felt other things coming through me. The act of writing and all creative acts kind of put you in flow. They connect you, I think, to the higher consciousness, or the one, or the well of creativity, kind of God itself, from which everything seems to emanate, and which is why so many artistic, creative people like myself get so addicted to it, because when you're in flow, it's just perfect. It's like such clarity that you just want to be there all the time. And I can get that high from performing too. If I'm having a particularly good performance, I can get there. I definitely can get there when I'm writing a song or working on music on the computer or at a studio, which is another reason why it's been such a big part of my life. And definitely most of the inspired, well, I mean, I would say that the new book is inspired, but the hot flashes of creativity that came were, again, so connective and so deep that I felt like I'm having help here. I have guidance. And so the psychic who told me about Drosh, DR, maybe a couple different spellings, Drauge, or possibly Droj. He's of Asian descent, but an unfamiliar Asian descent to the reader. And she saw him. When I came to her for the reading, he was there immediately, and she said that was her name was Teresa, Teresa Johnson. Teresa said that that was really unusual, that usually spirit guides will come in when called, but they don't just show up. But apparently he really wanted to meet me since I was taking the opportunity to have a reading with Teresa. And there was some advice given about how to approach the next book and things to do with the next book that are in the next book, that so I won't spoil all that. But I thought it was interesting that he was of some unfamiliar Asian descent, like maybe an earlier Asian form. And I did some research on it, and that's in the book too. And I don't want to spoil that, but I have come to believe that it's possible that perhaps I have been of some form of Asian descent in a previous life or lives. It could be too that my spirit group or my soul group on the other side is, as Kim Carey told me in a reading, kind of composed of thinkers, philosophers, people who have theories and ideas about the nature and meaning of life, and from a male point of view, from a mostly masculine point of view. And so I was thinking that the Asian Kiss band was like a little inside joke for me, because maybe these other men who appeared are also friends of mine, or were friends of mine in previous incarnations, or are helping to guide me. And I have this funny intuitive feeling that the future of the world, I mean, so many things could happen in 100 years, but I have this feeling that eventually China will come to dominate the world and be the sort of most powerful nation in the world. But I also believe that that won't happen until China is free, until there is a revolution in China against the autocracy, and the people are freed. Because with over 1 billion people, much like India, if China was a free nation, their economy would do so much. They would be so much more prosperous, because autocracies always squash innovation because they're top-down control, and democracies always thrive because they're bottom-up inspiration. Even though, yes, the world is kind of rigged in favor of the rich, it is still possible for someone in a democratic country to kind of come from nothing. And if you have a brilliant enough idea, invention, business, or you have an insight, you work hard enough, it is possible to build yourself from nothing and to become prosperous. And I mean, there's a reason why American technology still leads the world, even with all our internal problems right now. And it is because of our freedom. And that's why it's so sad to see these attempts to claw back so many freedoms, because the people doing it don't seem to know or care. It's probably the latter and not the first. That the more you repress a people, the more you restrict their freedoms, the less creativity thrives. That in the simplest way of saying it. There's more to say, but that's the simplest way of saying it. And so I have this kind of weird vision that when the Chinese people have finally had enough and China rebels, and it could take 50 years, it could take 20 years, it could take 100 years, then China will dominate the world, because they'll have so much more population and they'll be a powerful democracy. And so the world could look very different in 100 years. I mean, it will anyway, because of technology and global climate, change and everything else. And I could be wrong too, but I just have this feeling. So I was thinking one time how, who knows, maybe if it's true that we only incarnate every 85 or 100 years, if I am able or choose to come back here, perhaps in 100 years I'll be Chinese. But who knows? Yeah. So again, seeing these Asian men comically dressed as Kiss, like it didn't. I think it was meant for me to be amused by it, and I think that had a lot to do with Droge. And the reason, well, let me just read a couple more things, and then I'll tie this up. All right. So, and I wrote here that yes. So I thought maybe it was a hello from Droge as I near the end of editing my book. It was like the band, this Kiss cover band, wanted to move in with us. Excuse me, my family. They were friendly and non-threatening, but I didn't see how it could possibly work. And when they went outside to their car in the driveway, there was another band of people who looked kind of like old motorcycle hippies, who also wanted to move in, and they were from the arts conference too. So there's all these people who wanted to move into our house, which was also funny. And everybody was friendly, but it was like, this isn't gonna work, guys. So I have this dream, and at the time I'm not really sure about, I'm not 100% on it being Drosh or it being connected to maybe other spirit guides that I may have, who may have come from Asian, maybe Asian religious traditions or spiritual traditions. But when I when I went back and resumed editing my book the very next day after this dream, the first paragraph that I edited, because it allowed me to resume editing at the exact place where I left off, was about Drosh. It was the chapter about Drosh. So then I was like, yes, absolutely, this dream is from him. This is a reminder of his presence and his assistance. And then 2 pages later, there was a story in the book that I told about Kiss, because I booked one of the members of Kiss, Ace Frehley, who was the original lead guitarist. I booked him when I was working at the Art Center that I mentioned before to do a concert there, probably 6 years ago now. And when we were waiting to hear whether he was going to come or not, we had made an offer to him. They asked for a certain amount of money, and the way it works is if you offer exactly what they're asking for, then usually your event gets confirmed sooner. But we weren't sure how well it would sell, and so we offered a healthy amount of money, but less than what he was asking for. So I didn't know if the show was going to happen. But then I had a dream maybe a day or two before they actually did confirm, in which I was dressed up in Ace Frehley's makeup, which was unusual because when I was a kid, I always dressed up as Paul Stanley, who had the star on his eye. So I took it as a sign that Ace might be coming, and then they did indeed confirm. So again, to kind of come around this circle, I have the dream about probably Drosh and some friends dressed up as a comically terrible Kiss. And then when I resume editing my book the next day, the first paragraph I'm working on is about Drosh, and then 2 pages later is the story about the synchronicity in booking Ace Frehley of Kiss. And so them dressed as Kiss makes even more sense because it follows 2 pages right after Droge's appearance in the book. And there's your kind of circular way of getting meaning from the universe, the strange way that synchronicities are not linear always, not always linear. They They pop around, and then you see the pattern as a whole from a few steps back. So, 40 minutes. I just hit it. I'm going to end there. I hope this was interesting. Obviously, if it wasn't, then you didn't watch it, so there's no worries. I sincerely appreciate your comments. Diane is my champion of the comments section. I might not even make these videos if she didn't at least contribute, because sometimes I feel like I'm, talking into empty space. So let me know what you think. I mean, or share your own synchronistic kind of stories. Or if you think it's all garbage, you can say that too. I mean, I strongly disagree, but I don't know why you'd watch for 40 minutes just to say that. So and that's not my viewership anyway. My modest viewership is actually very encouraging and very kind, and I really appreciate it, and I do appreciate the feedbacks and thumbs up and likes and stuff. So yeah, that's what I got for today. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Be well. Take care. Hang in there. Hang in there. The BS, the political and social BS continues, but light's just got to win. Just has to. It always does. It just takes so long. So, all right. Take care. Thank you. Bye.